Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about these Holosun 510Cs. They're kind of similar to the EOTechs, minus the holographic. These aren't holographic, these are LED emitter. But I've been using these for about a month now, and I am seeing a major benefit in training beginners. Okay, and training beginners is, is really important for me as far as being able to study them and see what works best for them, what they're able to learn the fastest, because whatever they're able to learn the fastest is also going to be good for experienced people under stressful situations. Okay, so that's why I pay really close attention to beginners, and I see what they are able to learn fast, and I can definitely see that there's a big difference between the bigger window of these 510Cs compared to the tube styles of, let's say, this 503 CU. And if you look at my videos from last year, I was a big fan of these 503 CUs, and I still really like them. But I can see, now that I'm watching people shoot this and then shoot that, I can see that they're able to come up, find their reticle faster, get on target faster. When they're shooting awkward positions, like it can be like shooting behind them like this, doing a transition to the other side, getting behind them. They're able to do this a lot faster than if I give them a smaller tube style and I have them like leaning behind. Okay, now that 65 MOA circle is like at the very edge of the tube, behind here. And if if you're in a moving vehicle or an ATV and you're shooting, right? I'm watching that 65 MOA circle, and it's kind of like going, it's going all the way to the end of the tube, disappearing, and then coming back. Okay, so I'm actually losing that 65 MOA circle as I'm moving this around, compared to the larger window, or the 512 or 510 rather. As I'm moving this thing around, I can follow that circle all the way. Okay, so obviously I'm doing a really exaggerated motion. Like even if you're in a car, it's not going to move that much. It's going to move more like this, and I definitely don't have a problem keeping my, keeping my eye on the circle over there. So this is a definite winner. This is like, 510C is now like my favorite rifle optic. I wish I had bought more of those, because last year I was buying these 503 CUs, which are great. I like them a lot. But I see a big advantage in training people with the 510s. They're able to learn faster, do more advanced stuff faster, and that transitions over to experienced people as well, because if I take experienced people and put them under stressful situations, they'll be able to cope with it better with the larger window. Okay, with the larger window of the of these 510Cs. Okay, so it's like, why I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I buy these last year? Now here's the thing, when I became an instructor some, I don't know, 12 years ago, right? Back then, optics on rifles were not that common. Okay, so when I took my instructor courses, I took them with iron sights. Okay, and I trained people on iron sights 6 years in. Okay, so I've been training people for a total of 12 years. So the first 6 years, I only trained people with iron sights. About 6 years ago, I said, let me, obviously I had borrowed some other people's rifles, tested out the optics, I saw some benefits. I said, let me start training people on this and see if it's easier to train them on them, if they're able to do more advanced stuff faster. And sure enough, I threw some optics on there. The first optics that I bought were, I think, like $30 optics from Amazon. Okay, garbage. I think they lasted like a month or two, but it gave me some really useful information. So even though they were cheap $30 optics that only lasted a month, would hardly hold zero, immediately, like, just training 2 or 3 people, I was able to see how much faster they were able to learn and get on target and hit target. So within a couple of months, I'm like, okay, great, let me start looking into some better optics now. So I started going up the lines. I got some of the Bushnells. Bushnells gave me a problem because they weren't bright enough on sunny days. From there, I went to the Adderballs. The Adderballs were kind of good. They were bright enough, but what I found is that after a year of like shooting them every day, they would start to have mechanical issues, basically, because they had the dials. Basically, they would, on certain settings, they would stop working or they would blink off. So I stopped using the Adiballs. Those were the ones with the dials, and then from there I went to the Holosuns, and they work great. I'm really happy with the Holosuns. And initially I started off with these with the tube ones over here. The reason is because when I first started getting into optics, I did my research, and I heard people saying that if you use the open reflexes, the snow, mud, debris can get inside the optic over here and block your emitter, and you won't be able to see your reticle. So I said, okay, well, that sounds like a good enough reason not to use the open reflex and to use a tube style. And these work great for me, no problem. About a year ago, I got into optics on pistols, right? Because at this point, I have been training people for about 6 years with red dots on rifles. And I said, hey, you know what? If people are learning so much faster, it's not only that they're learning faster, they enjoy shooting rifles with optics on them. Okay, so like let's say I would have a pistol with iron sights, or I would have a rifle with iron sights, and then I would have a rifle with an optic on it. They, I would say, okay, which one you want to shoot more? Which one you want to train on? They would always say, okay, I want to train on that just because it has this really cool optic. Okay, so because shooting is a seeing thing, all right? Seeing is good. Seeing makes you want to shoot more. So people would always gravitate towards the rifles with the optics. I said, okay, gotta get some optics for the pistols. Now it's starting to become more and more common. I wanted to get a Glock MOS, right? But in 2020, there was none available to purchase. So I said, okay, I'm going to make myself a P80 and, build it so I can put an optic on it. That's what I got right here. And immediately, as soon as I started training people on this P80, I saw a huge increase in how fast I could train people, and how fast they got good. I had people, shooting like 4-inch targets at 30 feet, and they were just like pinging them, ping, 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 one after the other, right, with a pistol, right? I would put people on the 2-inch targets over there at 30 feet, and they were hitting those one after the other as well. So I saw a huge advantage to having optics on pistols, how quickly people would learn. Yes, there's the issue of being able to come out and finding your reticle, but once people found the reticle, they were a lot more accurate. Okay, so no question about that. But here's the thing: when I started using these Holosun 507s on the pistols, okay, I was using these, and some days it was raining, some days there was some mud. I saw that, hey, these were, it's not like people were saying that you're just going to get some dust and stuff in there and they're going to stop working. I'm saying these are pretty reliable. So at some point over the summer, I ended up getting a few of these Palmetto PX9. So these are really light rifles, right? These AR pistols, right? I said, I want to keep this light. I'm going to put the 507 pistol optics, right? Because this is basically a pistol optic, right? Same one over here. I said, I'm going to put this on this rifle, see how this works out. So I had this on here. I trained people from the summer all the way into the winter. I trained people on snowy days, on rainy days, on humidity days. And I really never had a problem with people being able to see the reticle. It was working in all weather. It was working good. I mean, sometimes, yeah, it would get foggy, but, you would just do that. It would clear it right up. If you went, let's say, from indoors to outdoors, train people at a lot of different locations. This was working out really good. So that sold me on the open reflex. I said, these things are not like what I was reading about, like, when I first started researching this. They don't, you don't get garbage in there that quickly. And in fact, I did some tests over the wintertime where I took the pistol and I was like dunking this in snow, right? And to see how quickly I could clear out this open reflex. And usually if you just dunk this in snow, if you just drop this in snow and you do a tap and rack, that shaking action will usually clear up the optic, okay? And if you're using like wet heavy snow, and I actually took wet heavy snow and I actually stuffed it in there. and you know, the tap and the rack sometimes was not enough to clear it out. But if I point shot it, right, so if I would do a point shoot, bang, the violent recoil would usually shake the wet, heavy snow loose. So I'm like, you know, snow in the optic is not an issue. And then a couple of weeks ago, in the springtime, I actually took mud. I was dunking this in the mud to test this out, and you know, I did this a couple of times. I was really having a hard time getting enough mud in there to not see the reticle. And then finally, I scooped up mud with my hand, and I just stuffed it in there, right? Covered the gun really good with mud. And yeah, I got to the point where I could not see the reticle, but at that point, the gun itself wasn't working either. So in order to get to the point where you can't see your reticle, you're pretty close to the point where your gun is not going to be working either. So I said, you know what? Open reflex is not that much of a problem with mud and snow and rain and all that stuff. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? Let's try these 510Cs, okay? So that's how I got to this point. Now, I did a video last summer where I borrowed somebody's EOTech, a friend of mine. I borrowed his EOTech for about a week, did a whole bunch of testing with it. He gave it to me with a magnifier. I saw a big, now this, mind you, this is about the same size as the EOTech. So I kind of had an idea of what to expect with this as far as the advantages. Major advantage to the big window versus this tube style over here is that if you if you're pointing this behind you, switching around, coming behind your back, you can find your circle a lot faster with the bigger window versus the tube optics. And also, if you're moving, right? If you're moving the gun around, if you're in a vehicle or an ATV, right, and the gun's moving around, you know, as I'm moving my arm up and down here, I can follow that 65 MOA circle, right, back and forth. Right, I'm not losing that circle through that movement. If I'm using the tube optic like this, and first of all, if I'm like reaching behind me, right, yeah, I can still see that 65 MOA circle, but it is like at the very edge of my tube. And if I start bouncing this around, I mean, what's happening is this is going right to the edge of the tube. Sometimes it's kind of like disappearing out before it comes in. So this is a lot harder to track. You can see I'm probably moving this a little bit slow. This is a lot harder to track when the rifle is moving. Okay, so big advantage to this 510C with the larger window. Now, when I tried out the EOTech, the reason why I was not interested in that is, first of all, primarily the battery life. Okay, I think the EOTechs are good for like 1,000 hours. You know, I'm constantly traveling, training people. You know, my guns are pretty much working every day, and I really didn't want to deal with the battery life issues. Okay, so I said, you know what? For the way I live, work, train people, you know, the battery life is like, you know, after being able to see. Right, see the reticle and the reliability of the optic, battery life is probably like the next most important thing. So the EOTech was just not going to work for me. Okay, so that's why I said, okay, great, I like it, you know, but you know, I can't use it. So here's the thing with the Holosuns, these things have like a 50,000 hour battery life. They have auto sleep, shake awake, so that covers that issue. So between the battery life, the bigger window, right, where I can follow that optic, follow that reticle through the shaking over here, you know, being able to come up, you know, get back into an awkward position. Okay, this is a major advantage, you know, as far as over the tube style, and as far as like the battery life of the EOTech. And then when you look at the aim point, aim point is dot only, right? So the aim points have like a 50,000, whatever, 80,000 hour battery life, but they give you a dot only, okay? I need that 65 MOA circle. That's a big advantage, right? As far as coming up and finding your reticle fast. Now, when I used the optics that had the dot only, what I would do is I would flip up the front sight post, because that would be like a reference point. That would help me find my dot quicker. But ever since I started using the 65 MOA circles, I can just keep the front sight post down because the big circles is easy enough to find. Okay, so that's a must. Now, one of the things I like about the 510Cs is that they carried over the options from the 507, because you can use it circle only, dot only, or circle plus dot. Okay, so on the 507s you get a 32 MOA circle, which is small enough so that when I place this on a target at about 30 or 40 feet over there, right, it's a 4-inch target. Okay, that circle is on the 4-inch target, so I can use circle only, so it's not too busy. But with the 65 MOA circle, okay, if I put this on a 4-inch target at about 30 to 40 feet, you know, it's outside the target. So basically, it's about 6 to 7 inches wide. So that's why with the 65 MOA circle, I want to use that 2 MOA dot, right? So this, I use dot plus circle on this, whereas with the 507s, I use the 32 MOA circle only. Okay. So that's what we are. I mean, I'm absolutely loving these 510Cs. I wish I had bought more of these, right? Because last year I was buying the 503 CUs. That's this one over here. I was buying a lot of these last year, which I said, you know, like I said, I still like these. They're great, but big advantage to that bigger circle. Okay. As far as the comparing it to the EOTech, which is holographic, that's really like the only thing that people can point and say that, hey, the EOTech is a true holographic, whereas this is an LED emitter. The only advantage to the holographic is if you're using it with a magnifier. And here's the thing: if I'm going to use a magnifier, I prefer to use it with the Holosun 503G ACSS. I'd rather use it with that because it gives me that fine point that I can put underneath the target, and I can focus on that. So that's what I prefer to use with a magnifier. So that's a non-issue with the 510C. As far as the reticle itself, I don't like the you know, basically the 510C gives you a very crisp LED reticle. The EOTech gives you like a, you know, it's not crisp. It's kind of like a little dotty. So I was never too crazy about the way the reticle looks on the EOTechs. Okay, so that's what, you know, I much prefer the way this 510C looks. As far as the solar powered, but I use the solar power as a backup. I keep this in battery mode because that's also manual mode. I prefer to stay in manual mode so I can adjust the brightness as I need to. When you're in auto mode, what I find is if you're like in a sunny area, if you're in a shady area shooting into a sunny area, it's not going to be bright enough. Or if you're shooting at night with a light, what's going to happen is the sensor is looking up here. It sees that the light's really low. It dims the light, but meanwhile your flashlight's here projecting forward, and what happens is your reticle washes out against your flashlight, right? So that's why I just prefer to stay in manual. Now, one of the things I like about the 510C is if you're a right-handed shooter, the buttons are on the left side, so I can more easily access these buttons with my thumb. If you're a left-handed shooter, okay, obviously now it's a little bit, you know, more cumbersome. You know, in that case, you know that, you know, with the 503 CUs, they put the buttons on the right side, so it's a little bit easier for a left-handed person to access. So if you're a left-handed person, you might like the button placement better on the 503 CUs, which are on the right side. If you're a right-handed shooter, you're gonna like them better on the left side, which you can access with your left hand. So that's one of the things worth pointing out. So I do like the fact that it is solar power. And I use the solar power as a backup. I keep this in battery mode, and if the battery ever did die, I did have the option. If I'm outside, I have the option of switching over to solar power mode. I like the quick release. Now, this has an absolute cold witness. I would have preferred a lower 1/3 cold witness, so I would have preferred if this was naturally a little bit higher. They do make a riser that you can, rise this up a little bit. Initially, I thought of getting it. It wasn't available, and I said, I guess I'll just learn to live with this the way it is. So that's fine. But it is an absolute cold witness, and if you do want a lower 1/3 cold witness, you're going to have to get the riser. The quick release feature is really nice. Battery life, I think it's like 50,000 hours, so that's really great. It does have this hood, like the this protective hood over here, just like the EOTechs. I am concerned possibly taking this off just to lighten this up a little bit, but I may or I may not. The only thing is, if you remove the hood, it also makes this thinner, so it's really great. It might make it a little bit easier for beginners. I don't know. I might or may not. I may just leave it the way it is. I think that's a minor point, but the hood is removable. So anyway, I hope you guys found this information useful. But that's my. I guess I'm going to call this an initial review, because I've had these for about a month now. I have had lots of people shoot it. I can see that the beginners are able to learn faster, shoot better, get to more advanced stuff faster with the 510Cs compared to the tube style 503 CUs. So definitely recommend those. Recommend the 510C. So I hope you guys found this video useful. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon. Hello everyone, I wanted to mention one more very important point, and this is probably one of the only drawbacks of this 510C. If you're in a sunny area, shooting towards a shady area, right, you're going to notice a square around your 65 MOA circle. Okay, it's like a shady reddish kind of square. What I think that is the light reflecting off of this square emitter back onto the glass. Okay, so the entire square emitter in that one situation is going to reflect on the glass. So what you're going to see is, like, if you're using the 65 MOA circle with the dot, you're going to see the circle, and you're going to see kind of like a shady area around it. I mean, it's not like it's solid. You can still see through it, but it's there. And even if you switch to dot only, you're still going to see that square. And again, I noticed it only if you're in a sunny area, shooting towards a shady area. Initially, I thought maybe it was a defect, but because I have two of these 510Cs, I was able to see in both of them, and I even asked around about it, and people told me that, yeah, that's the emitter, the entire emitter reflecting up on the glass. Okay, so just be aware of that. That's not a defect. That's just the way it's going to look. You're going to see it's going, that emitter there is going to reflect back on the glass in that specific situation. And I had to kind of move around a little bit. I was looking towards like a brownish structure. So I don't know how it's going to look with other colors, but yeah, I was looking at a tan/brownish structure. But it's there, it's real. If I'm shooting just out in the open, I don't see it. If I'm shooting indoors, I don't see it. I only see it specifically if I'm in a sunny area, shooting or pointing the gun or aiming the gun into a shady area. Okay, so yeah, so just be aware of that. So talk to you guys soon.